But those high temperatures and the humidity likely to spark another round of thunderstorms coming up initially across the south during Friday evening, then spreading to Wales and by the end of the night and into Saturday across parts of northern England. Met Office warnings are in place for heavy rain and thunderstorms. Do check out the Met Office website for full details of those warnings.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. The tragic plane explosion in India bound for London Gatwick has claimed more than 200 lives, including more than 50 Britons. But one British father has made a miraculous escape. We'll be speaking to an aerospace expert about how and why this tragedy occurred. The scenes from 3 days of rioting in Ballymena, Northern Ireland, has sparked concerns that further civil unrest could arise. Politicians fail to heal the disconnect between citizens and the people they elect. Is it time for those in positions of power to start listening to the people? The government is reportedly pondering new measures to limit social media use amongst children and teenagers. But what do the teenagers themselves think? What impact would limitations on their digital presence have on their lives? I'll be asking my own daughter, Mary, what teens really make of all this. And the assisted dying bill, suicide bill, is set for a crunch vote tomorrow as both sides of the debate increase their campaign efforts. I spoke to the Archbishop of Southwark to discuss what the consequences of the proposals could be. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by a formidable panel, GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and former government advisor, James Price. As ever, I want to hear your views. It's a crucial part of the programme. Mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much. The top stories this evening reports say a British passenger has survived a crash involving a Gatwick airport-bound plane which went down in a fireball shortly after takeoff in India. The survivor says he has no idea how he escaped the aircraft, his relatives have said. A warning some viewers may find the following footage distressing. The Air India flight, which was carrying more than 240 people from the city of Ahmedabad, including 53 British nationals, collided with a medical college today. The Hindustan Times said 40-year-old British man Vishwash Kumar Ramesh survived the crash, telling the newspaper 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. It all happened so quickly. Video circulating on social media shows the moment the plane went down, crashing into a ball of flames, as massive plumes of smoke can also be seen rising into the sky near the airport in Ahmedabad, largest in the state of Gujarat. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said the crash was absolutely devastating and that the investigation will take some time. The King says he and Queen Camilla express their deepest possible sympathy to those who await the news of loved ones. In a statement posted on Facebook this evening, Gloucester Muslim community said Akhil Nanabawa, his wife Hannah and their 4-year-old daughter Sarah had died in the crash. Tata Sons, which owns Air India, will offer around £86,000 to the families of each person who died in the crash, the company said. This is the first fatal crash involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, models of which have flown more than 5 million journeys across 14 years. In other news, Northern Ireland's police chief has warned the bigots and racists that have been behind 3 nights of disorder in the region that his officers will be coming after them. The disorder largely took place in Ballymena, but violence has spread to other towns, including Larne, where a leisure centre providing emergency shelter for relocated families was attacked and set on fire. Authorities have described it as racist thuggery targeted at ethnic minorities and police officers. One man is clearly seen throwing a machete towards security services. The disorder began on Monday after a peaceful protest over an alleged sexual assault in the County Antrim town. 41 officers injured, 15 people arrested over the 3 nights of violence. Chair of the Northern Ireland Policing Board, Mukesh Sharma, says it is absolutely race-based.
This violence is racism, pure and simple racism, with the police left to deal with the outworkings of societal unrest. It is truly a sad reflection of our society that people are putting identifiers on their front doors in the hope of escaping attack. The Chief Constable has assured us that the police will stand to protect and will bring those responsible to justice and will attempt to prevent where they can. But the real prevention work lies in the hands of others.
And the Chancellor says she is disappointed after new figures show the UK economy shrank by 0.3% in April. The sharper-than-expected decline comes a day after Rachel Reeves promised to boost growth in her spending review. Her plans included an extra £29 billion a year for the NHS in England and boosts for defence, education and housing, although some departments will see their budgets squeezed. Economists say tax rises will be almost inevitable in the autumn. Rachel Reeves defended her announcements. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. It is over to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. What we've witnessed in the past few days in Ballymena and across parts of Northern Ireland is horrifying. Mobs appearing to torch homes, destroy community centres and boastfully posing across social media. There is no justification for this. Violence is wrong, whatever the grievance. But if we really want to stop this chaos, we have to ask, why are so many people taking part in this and why have they become so angry in the first place? There is an ever-increasing chasm between electors and the elected, the people and the politicians who are supposed to represent them. Many voters feel ignored, dismissed and misled, not just by individuals, but by an entire system. When someone like Rachel Reeves is seen to be dishonest, and we saw that earlier on with her saying she'd fixed the problem for pensioners, and then the next day we get 0.3% decline in the economy, it only deepens that sense of betrayal. When taxes and the cost of basic necessities go up, yet quality of life goes down, people repeatedly ask for immigration to be cut, and yet it continues to rise. Those same people feel less and less as though the powers that be care or take their wishes seriously. So what are the political consequences? Well, into that vacuum of trust steps Nigel Farage and Reform, among others, because he promises solutions and he's listening to what people are complaining about. People want to be heard and they want the truth. They want leaders who are close enough to the ground to understand what's happening in their own communities, such as rising crime, children walking into shops and stealing with no consequences, the erosion of law and order that makes people feel that no one is in control. Just take a look at this video circulating on social media of young children brazenly shoplifting.
What is that?
Whoa.
Hungry. Speak to that. Speak to that.
What's going on?
Can you send police, please?
I'm hungry.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
What the heck?
What the hell are you?
And let's not ignore what happened to young people. This is a generation who were locked in their homes, away from basic socialisation during their formative years because of the pandemic, even though they were at very limited risk. They were isolated and anxious. These were the decisions of politicians, and society is paying the price. Meanwhile, politicians make grand promises, but rarely seem to listen. The distance between electors and the elected has become a breeding ground for distrust, and distrust left unchecked becomes anger. That anger is now being exploited by the worst elements of society, stoking fear, pushing hate, and turning young people into foot soldiers for chaos. None of this excuses what's happening on the streets of Ballymena, but we do have to understand why it is happening. Politicians need to be honest. They need to tell the truth, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular. They need to stop talking at voters and start listening to them. Because if the divide keeps growing, we're going to see more unrest, more fear, and more communities ripped apart, not just in Northern Ireland, but across the United Kingdom. As ever, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm now delighted to be joined by a distinguished peer and former Labour MP, Baroness Hoey, Kate Hoey. Kate, thank you very much for joining me. What do you think underlies the riots in Ballymena? Why have so many people resorted to violence?
Well, I think, Jacob, we must remember that the beginning was a very large, peaceful demonstration of people out supporting the family of the young girl who had been sexually assaulted allegedly by two people who were charged, two young people who needed an interpreter in the court. But after that, it turned into what I'm afraid happens so many places where there's a peaceful demonstration and then a few people start agitating. A lot of people came in from outside as well, from outside Ballymena, and we ended up with a disgraceful group of thugs literally going around destroying communities, homes, and destroying, you know, things like the leisure centre being attacked last night in Larne. And it is very distressing because Ballymena actually has a huge bus depot where they make buses, Right Bus, which employs a large number of Filipinos who've come into the country legally, have really involved themselves in the local community and are very much welcomed. And this is, you know, the context of this is very important. And I think the one member of Parliament who's spoken out about it, Jim Allister, who is the MP for the area, you know, the problem is no one wants to really listen to what is behind it, because then they're accused of almost supporting it. And even this morning on the BBC, Jim Allister was kind of ridiculed because he actually said, look, we've got to really recognise that there are people coming in now to Northern Ireland through the Republic of Ireland, from particularly Romania, who are Roma, not necessarily getting on particularly well with the other Romanians that are there. And nobody has documented them. They're going into houses that are, you know, multi-occupied, and people feel very resentful. Now, you can feel resentful and you don't have to go out and you know, behave like those thugs did. But people have to not feel that they can't speak out without being accused of being racist, accused of, trying to divide people.
And can't we learn from our history? Because in the late 1970s, the National Front were taking to the streets and rioting and behaving appallingly. And Margaret Thatcher completely destroyed them by introducing the 1981 British Nationality Act, which took control of immigration and took away the oxygen that was supporting thuggery. And that government should learn how to deal with these situations, which is to ensure the law is effective and properly enforced.
Absolutely. And you see, it hasn't been being enforced in all sorts of ways, and not just on sort of trivial crime that then gets ignored, but in terms of border control. It is ludicrous now that we have a situation, particularly in Northern Ireland, where people can come in without ever being checked. And yet, ironically, Jacob, if you go the other way now, the Irish government is actually stopping buses quite regularly and checking for people going into the Republic of Ireland from Great Britain, i.e. and from the United Kingdom through Northern Ireland. But I think what we need is proper enforcement of immigration rules, and those rules are not being enforced, and people see that all the time, and it just leads to a resentment, plus all the other things that you mentioned in when you opened about, people are very hard up at the moment. They don't think the government is looking after them. They resent the fact that they are being sort of set apart in Northern Ireland a bit from the rest of the United Kingdom. And then, of course, we've seen so many examples of just people not being listened to. And until politicians recognise that, things can only get worse.
Kate, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm now joined by my panel, GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and the former government advisor, James Price. Nigel, it really is a problem, isn't it, that violent people are taking advantage of this deep-seated feeling of discontent that there is. And the way to stop the violence, yes, of course, is to arrest them and prosecute them, but it's also to deal with the sources of discontent that affect a lot of law-abiding people too.
Yeah, and that applies everywhere. I mean, I don't think that what is going on in Ballymena can be compared, as you did, to, say, Rachel Reeves. But, however, there are special circumstances there. And Northern Ireland is a special circumstance, that migration was very low there before the 1998 Good Friday Agreement. No one wanted to go there because it was a war zone. After that, 300,000 people over 20 years then moved in. There was bound to be a problem. Your general point is obviously right, that politicians need to listen to the people who elect them and, as best they can, not always, but as best they can, carry out their wishes.
And that immigration is at the heart of this. Yeah. James, let me bring you in, because actually the Conservatives, I was a member of a Conservative government, failed on immigration, and that's underlying a lot of this problem.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think you were so right in how you've framed this, about it being, of course, you have to just say that the violence is wrong, it's always wrong, and the state is the only entity that should be using violence in any circumstance, obviously. But if you don't look at the deeper-seated problem, which people don't want to do because it makes some uncomfortable thoughts down the line on these things, you'll never get to the bottom of any of it. It wasn't just the Conservatives, I think, who failed on immigration. Every single election since 1974, and we had two elections, and every single time the party that won was one that was promising to cut immigration. What happened? It went up every single time.
Well, Margaret Thatcher dealt with it, and actually, to be fair to him, Michael Howard dealt with it. And Donald Trump has reduced illegal migration in April by 91%. So it can be done if people just have a bit of backbone.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think you have to be, to use a horrible corporate term, operationalise this stuff properly, right? Which means understanding the way that legislation is preventing a lot of this from happening and work out how to do that, and then to adequately staff the border forces. Somebody like Dominic Cummings makes the point that actually stopping, say, the small boats, which is a very high salience issue, would be trivially easy for a country like ours with a great big navy to actually stop a bunch of dinghies. It's not that. It's the legal entity, and it's the lack of, as you say, political will stopping it. And until we stop that, we're never going to fix this problem.
And this ties in with the Human Rights Act, that we are not going to be able to stop mass migration if we don't deal with the Human Rights Act.
Well, I mean, you're talking about leaving the ECHR.
I am appealing the Human Rights Act.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's the answer. And I don't think there is a single answer to the way to stop immigration, certainly not Dominic Cummings' version about deploying the Navy. All you'd end up doing is sinking a load of dinghies and drowning people in the Channel. It's a long-term thing. I mean, one of the things that came out of the spending review is the idea of trying to get rid of asylum hotels. Now, it's quite a promise. I mean, it's not
going to happen, is
well,
it?
it's a bit like Stop the Boats that Rishi Sunak tried, but she did put 200 million into it.
Yeah, but you get rid of asylum hotels, and you go along Park Lane, and you've got a tented city.
Well, no, I mean, the answer would be the extra 200 million that came out of the spending review is that you get rid of the backlog of people who are queuing up. The Tories did nothing about in the last few months in government. Once you can actually process those people as quickly as possible.
That means making them British citizens.
Not necessarily. It means returning people who have no right to be here, and yes, accommodating those who have. But it doesn't mean letting them in a hotel for months on end.
Very large numbers have been getting through because until the last government said that arriving here illegally meant you couldn't claim asylum, 90% plus of them were getting their asylum claims heard. The Labour government's moved away from that. It is legal to claim asylum here. We'll be back to 90%.
Which it is. It was never illegal not to. I mean,
we passed a law saying it was.
No, we didn't really. we said they were inadmissible. We didn't say they were illegal, but there's nothing illegal about crossing the Channel in a small boat.
Yes, there is. It's against immigration law. And that's the thing people feel so angry about. The law doesn't get enforced. And that the good law-abiding citizen gets a speeding fine through the post every other week and sees people shoplifting, reads about Greggs being raided, sees those videos of teenagers stealing things, and sees people flooding the country illegally. And they feel that it is two-tier justice.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think, first of all, it's a little bit glib to say that just stopping the boats to have people drown. We wouldn't do that at all. That's not right. And on this idea...
Well, they don't deploy destroyers to try and stop dinghies getting across.
Again, Dominic Cummings was in the room with these people, had the operational people saying it would be very easy to do that. We obviously have the resources if there was the will to stop these boats. On the asylum hotels, what's been proposed now seems to be to nationalise them, as if that will solve the problem. Now we'll just have the taxpayer be directly on the hook and have lots of buildings full of asylum seekers indefinitely. That's not going to make people happy with this. Fundamentally, we have to have, as you say, a set of laws that will keep immigration down, that will keep the king's peace, frankly. And as you say, if you don't have this properly enforced, you'll start to see people going, well, if he's allowed to go and shoplift and not get in trouble for it, if she's allowed not to do that, well, why am I being such a muggins and doing this? And then you start to get onto the road, as we've seen tragically in Ballymena, that we saw in Southport after those horrible attacks as well, because there's that much tension being built up that you start hearing in focus groups up and down the country, people fearing that we're heading towards serious civil conflict in this country. And politicians are scoffing at that for now. I don't think they'll be scoffing at it for long.
No, I think that's right. I'm very worried about the situation the country's in because people feel their nation is broken, and that is providing the fuel for bad actors to commit crimes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Britain is broken. I think that we face an awful lot of problems, but the idea that this is a broken country, you just have to walk around it to see it's not broken.
Walk around London at 10 o'clock at night, and there are people sleeping rough everywhere.
Well, I mean...
Just walk along Victoria Street.
So something was done about that. We've now decriminalised sleeping rough.
Make it worse.
Make it much worse.
Well, not if you actually do something to get them off the streets.
But they're not. They could do that without decriminalising it. They're just not doing anything. Anyway, we've got to move on. But thank you very much to my panel. And next, the tragic plane explosion in India, bound for London Gatwick, has claimed more than 200 lives, including more than 50 Britons. As the incident left just one survivor, we'll be speaking to an aerospace expert about how and why this tragedy occurred.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Yeah, so I got the news on 4th of April, right in between GB Team Selection Series, which hurt even more because I was leading in the points. But all of a sudden, I get a phone call being told you're banned from attending any Pal UK premises, banned from speaking with your teammates or staff, which was the most brutal part of it, and suspended, or whatever word you want to use.
Think though, Kurt, that posting subscription-only saucy content online might get you in a little bit of trouble, or did it not cross your mind?
No, for sure. But I want to make it clear that I have tried things in the past. I've been living life on the edge so many years. We moved from Latvia in 2010, been living life on the edge since then, done everything from working freelance long into the long nights, working at the Amazon warehouse. I have seeked out other alternatives. But in December last year, I got to a point of realization where I thought, is it worth it, or can I find an alternative? And I knew of other GB athletes doing it. I didn't think it was going to cause outrage like this.
Yeah, because I was thinking, a nice chap like you, who's obviously very talented with your sport, you could make some money doing, like online fitness training or personal training and things like that don't involve, getting your kit off.
No, for sure. I've been making content for like 6-7 years now. Over 1,000 of the pieces of content have been inspirational, motivational. I've visited over 30 schools in the UK, going to the hardest parts of the UK, inspiring kids from underprivileged backgrounds to get into sport. I've tried that, but I don't know. I found that in this day and age, unless you are smart or find some little controversial thing you can hold on to, it's going to be hard to get attention and sponsorship.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about Ballymena and the riots that were going on, and we've got lots of mail mogs. Michael says, I do not support the violence, but I feel this is what happens when a democratic government does not implement what the voters voted for. Sally says people have had enough, but this farce of a government just can't see it. Richard, I find it interesting that the establishment seems to be blaming working-class people for all the wrongs of the UK. In reality, it was the establishment that did all that, and as usual, the working classes were mere pawns in their games. Manny, the British people has pretty much been gaslighting, the British government, has pretty much been gaslighting the British people ever since Heath and Wilson lied to us about the long-term aspirations of the EEC back in 1973, and Westminster and Whitehall have done nothing but gaslight us since Maastricht. Well, thank you for those. And to the sad news, one miraculous escape. One British father made a miraculous escape as the sole survivor of the tragic Air India plane crash earlier today. The explosion occurred as the plane was en route from India to London Gatwick, and it's claimed more than 200 lives, including over 50 British nationals. The mid-air disaster is one of the deadliest in recent memory, and tonight questions are mounting about how such catastrophic failure, whether technical, security-related or otherwise, could have occurred. I'm now able to speak to an expert who will be able to understand why this tragedy occurred, an aerospace engineer, Ella Atkins. Ella, thank you for joining me. What do people know so far? What real information is there before we get on to any speculation?
So we have the flight track up to kind of a maximum altitude that was recorded of 625 feet above the ground. We have videos taken by people on the ground from multiple perspectives. It looks like you're showing one of them now. This shows in a highlight the plane taking off, looks like a normal takeoff roll. And then once it rotates and then becomes airborne, which should be happening shortly. So far, everything looks normal. As it lifts off the ground, normally you would see the landing gear retract, but that does not appear to be happening. So it looks like the landing gear was down during the entire flight of this aircraft before the crash. Now you see it descending. That is not normal. So you kind of saw it go up to a maximum altitude. It doesn't lose control in terms of rolling or doing anything crazy like that, but it should be climbing, and instead it's descending to the ground. So I think this video, which is the best one that I have seen, really shows how a plane that looked totally normal taking off basically couldn't remain aloft. My understanding is that there was a mayday call from the flight crew, from the pilot, that said that there was no thrust. No thrust is a term that's used when both engines have either turned off or failed or are not being controlled properly. So no thrust is something that when that happens, you can't stay up. When you're so low like this, you really don't have anywhere to go but down, which is exactly what happened to this airplane. We do not know why no thrust was reported by the crew. There are several different causes that could have happened, and we need the black box data to comment on that further.
And they'll be looking for the black box now. And of course, it was a 9-hour flight, and so there would have been an awful lot of fuel in the plane, which would explain the seriousness of the explosion. Is that correct?
Yes, the plane would have been, it would have had at least 10 hours of fuel to have some reserve, which is quite a lot. It might have not been 100% full, but that doesn't matter. When you crash like that into a building, there's going to be structural compromise of most of the parts of the aircraft. And of course, there would be an explosion at that point.
And in terms of no thrust, these are highly automated aeroplanes, aren't they, with significant computer systems in them. What do you think is most likely, from what you know at this stage, a failure of the systems, or is it more likely to have been human error?
I think there are 3 possible causes that jump out, and I cannot comment on which one is most likely. Fuel contamination has been cited as a possible cause. Would both engines quit at exactly the same time from that? That's not clear, but I'm sure that the investigators will be testing the fuel to determine if there was any contamination, should they be able to find some still intact in the wings. The second one would be potentially the flight crew entered an erroneous command to the automation in the aircraft. We don't know that until we see the flight data recorder information. And the third was that there could have been a problem with the electronics in the aircraft delivering the right commands to the engines. But it's really too early to speculate on which of those causes or whether there was some combination that resulted in the no thrust situation.
Well, Ella, thank you very much for explaining this tragic incident to us, and our thoughts obviously are with the families of the people who've been killed. In a moment, the government is reportedly pondering new measures to limit social media use amongst children and teenagers. But what do the teenagers themselves think? What impact would limitations on their digital presence have on their lives? I'll be asking my own daughter, Mary, what teens really make of all this, and she's got some pretty fruity views. See you.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to holiday sun forecasts from the Met Office. Most places sunny across the Mediterranean, particularly hot in Italy, breezy for parts of Greece as well as the Canaries, but no more than usual. And for Iberia, well, chance of some showers clearing northern Spain, but otherwise it's hot sunshine, temperatures well above average throughout much of Italy, whilst a few showers are likely over Greece during the next few days, but most places stay sunny this weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some heavy downpours today. They're easing somewhat overnight, but further thunderstorms are likely, particularly so this time tomorrow. Low pressure is sitting to the west, and that's drawing up warm and humid air. It's going to be quite a sticky night, quite a close night. We've seen some heavy downpours across Northern Ireland. They're starting to ease. Still some lively downpours for parts of North Wales, northwest England at the moment, but they'll track northwards and ease off as they do. Still quite a wet night across parts of western Scotland. Many areas, though, further east, having a dry night, long clear spells, but look at the numbers. Holding up in the mid-teens. That brisk breeze will be easing in most places through the night. So it won't be as windy tomorrow. Much of eastern England having a fine and sunny start, along with much of northern Scotland as well. The overnight rain should be pulling away from the Western Isles. Still maybe 1 or 2 showers in western Scotland, and certainly there will be more showers again in Northern Ireland. They could get pretty lively, especially around the middle part of the day. The odd shower for Wales, but most of England and Wales will have a dry start to the morning and quite a warm start as well, and pretty sticky, steamy day across these eastern parts where temperatures come in the afternoon may get into the high 20s. Not as hot where we've got a bit more cloud elsewhere, but still generally dry and bright. It's quite humid. Some heavy downpours around the middle of the day for Northern Ireland, and look down to the south. Another batch of thunderstorms then starting to arrive late in the day, coming into the southwest. As I said, very warm across these eastern areas. Elsewhere, temperatures in the low 20s generally. But those high temperatures and the humidity likely to spark another round of thunderstorms coming up initially across the south during Friday evening, then spreading to Wales, and by the end of the night and into Saturday across parts of northern England. Met Office warnings are in place for heavy rain and thunderstorms. Do check out the Met Office website for full details of those warnings.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The government is reportedly considering new rules to limit children and teens' use of social media, with things like time limits and curfews. It's a move many parents are calling long overdue, especially as countries like Australia and France push for outright bans for under-16s. Some argue anxiety, self-harm and mental health issues among teens have been linked to excessive smartphone use. Ministers are being urged to act. But what do the teens themselves make of the idea? Well, I'm joined now by my daughter Mary, as well as my panel, to discuss this. Mary, you're 16. What is your social media usage?
Well, I have Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, although I've recently stopped using Snapchat because I've just found it quite boring and I prefer WhatsApp.
And on Instagram, you've got a public Instagram, a parent Instagram and a friend's Instagram, is that right?
Yes, I have a public account and that was fun for advertising when we did the reality TV show, which was brilliant. And then I have a private one that's for family and friends, and then I have a just friends one.
That you keep your parents out of?
Yes.
And how much time do you spend on social media, and how much do you mind what other people are saying about you?
I don't care what other people are saying about me because, I believe in freedom of speech, so I think people are entitled to their wrong opinion. So I don't have a problem with anything that people say about me online or offline. My own use of social media, I actually limited myself to an hour a day on TikTok for revision of GCSEs and just in general. And this is why I really disagree with the government getting involved, because I think it's an excuse for poor parenting. It's not the government's business what I'm doing online or how long I spend online. It should be up to children and their parents, and we need autonomy. We need to encourage children and their parents to have a sense of independence.
So when you wanted to revise, you actually told me to set a limit on my telephone for you so that you couldn't use TikTok for more than an hour. And it seems to me this is very straightforward, that parents have responsibility to their children rather than the state thinking it should nationalise parenting.
Absolutely. I'm very fond of my nanny, but I am not fond of the nanny state. We need to leave things like this up to parents and to children. As you said, you control, what I'm consuming on my device, how long I'm consuming that for, so limits on TikTok and Instagram. In general, I have 5 hours a day. But with things like Audible, it's not just, I think there's a sort of anti-social media and we don't want children on smartphones. I think that's ridiculous. We want smart use of social media. We want smart consumption. And so giving this to the government who don't know individual situations, who aren't aware of family setups, one size fits all doesn't in fact fit anyone.
And schools have an ability to do things, because your school, when you were first there, regulated your mobile use very strictly. It was quite hard to talk to you, actually, when you were first there. And you don't think it's unreasonable for schools to say when you arrive in the morning, they'll take your telephone off you?
Absolutely. I mean, I found this quite irritating. But, as I said, I really believe in autonomy. And I do believe that schools should have the right to impose the restrictions as they see fit in school hours. After school hours, it's none of the school's business. It's up to parents. It is slightly different for boarding because you're there all the time. But for, you know, for day schools, it is up to the school. Why should it be up to the government?
And can you tell me, you may not want to admit this, can you get round the limits I put on already, or do they actually work?
Oh, no comment.
No comment. Well, I think my daughter's clearly in training for a political career. It seems to me, Nigel, that one of the things that's been ignored in this conversation is actually how children use social media. Mary was saying, and iPhones, she uses it to listen to Audible, and that's educational as well as using it for TikTok, which is probably less educational.
Well, I mean, Mary disciplines herself when it comes to it. The question about the state getting involved is what happens to those who don't discipline themselves, who are doom scrolling all day. And I appreciate taking away the phone is just an impossibility nowadays. It would be like pulling the sun from the sky. But the kind of things that the Technology Secretary Peter Carr is looking at would be and the technology companies seem to make encouraging noises about doing it, would be restricting social media access during school hours, stopping access after 10 p.m. at night, or alternatively doing what you do, Mary, which is restricting the amount of time you actually spend on it. None of that sounds to me too much of a problem. You'll probably find a way of getting round it.
That's the thing, James. Isn't it better done by a discussion between parents and their children? That much though I wanted to be the Victorian paterfamilias, I soon discovered that children have minds of their own. And if you agree with them, or if they best of all suggest to you they've got some revision to do and they want less time on their iPhone, then they'll actually follow that, and you're helping them rather than a blanket ban, and then they'll just get their parents' iPhone and get around the ban somehow or another.
Exactly right. I think children are very ingenious when it comes to these sorts of things, and boundaries are there to be tested, right? As you said, I think there's a difference between wanting something to happen and wanting the state to go and do it. We're in a time where, as we've just been talking about, we're in the foothills of deep civil conflict. The economy is absolutely in the toilet. The world is very dangerous. And the state is suggesting that it's going to spend time telling children what they can and can't do under their parents' noses. I don't think that's right. I think the one bit of intervention that the state should look at is banning TikTok. I think specifically TikTok ahead of other things, because I think the Chinese state that controls it really is using it as something of a super weapon aimed at children's brains. I think that is a different conversation.
Well, let me bring you back in on TikTok, because you use TikTok. During the general election, you were regularly sending me things that were put on TikTok by Reform and by the Labour Party, which you thought were a lot better than the Conservative Party. How are they coming through to you?
Absolutely. So I don't think that TikTok is non-educational, because all of these apps depend on how you use it. Your For You page is tailored to you, which I think is a good thing. It's often used as a bad thing to be, no, this is why social media is bad, because of the algorithms. No, I think that's why it's a good thing, because there's a block button for a reason. On TikTok, it has an I'm not interested in this. You can report the creators. There are ways in which you can tailor it to yourself. That's what I do. And yes, I sent you lots of videos on how Reform was promoting themselves, how Labour was doing it, and they were doing it much better than Conservatives. And this is my view, is that we need to use social media. I think everyone really should use social media, because it's what we're doing in the modern age.
And isn't that the point, James, that we as politicians, and Nigel, need to understand it better, rather than just thinking banning it is the answer, that it's older people are just less good at understanding it than the teenagers.
We're seeing what will happen in Australia. It hasn't happened yet, but the idea of banning anyone under 16 from any social media, this is at a trial stage at the moment. But the important thing surely is sort of digital literacy and proper engagement, and that should be a function for the schools.
I think that's right in most of these things. But again, on TikTok in particular, there are some studies that show that a prolonged use of it will increase your positive perception of the Chinese Communist Party. The stuff that Chinese people see on there, it's like spinach. The stuff that we see in the West is like crack cocaine.
All right, so when Mary becomes part of the Communist Chinese Party, I will know that I was wrong and TikTok should have been banned. Anyway, thank you to Miss Rees-Mogg and my panel. Meanwhile, over in Quangaville, civil servants are working hard on their chakras After Race Equality Week, LGBT plus History Month and the emotionally taxing Journey to Wellness Week, staff are now diving deep, favoured civil service term, into Carers Week, bravely promoting awareness and understanding between the hours of 10 and 3, when they ought to be working. This Friday's highlight, a guided meditation led by Operations Manager Belinda Lamb, because nothing says productivity like deep breathing on the public purse, all funded by a modest £264 million from taxpayers, as they might say, namaste. Anyway, coming up, the assisted dying bill, assisted suicide bill, is set for a crucial vote tomorrow as both sides of the debate increase their campaigning efforts. I discussed this with the Archbishop of Southwark to see what the effect of such a move would be.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This Saturday, join GB News as we mark the King's official birthday. Trooping the Colour, hosted by Charlie Peters, Miriam Cates and me, Cameron Walker, live from Buckingham Palace from 10 a.m. this Saturday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, we're talking about teen smartphone bans, and your mailmogs have come in numbers. Ryan says the government should not be allowed to do this. They are not parents, and they are trying to treat parents like children. This is wrong on every level. People should realise that next they will come for adults. Alison says it's not the government's job to decide how my children use their mobile devices. It is a parent's job, not the government. We are fed up to the back teeth with government interfering in all our lives on every level is bang out of order. And there are 3 charming emails, which I'm very grateful, on Mary. So Catherine kindly says, Jacob should be very proud of his daughter. I am. Very level-headed young lady. Diane says, Mary is a daughter to be proud of, Sir Jacob. Thank you. And Mazzy so generously says, what a lovely, eloquent young lady. I wouldn't have expected anything else of Jacob's daughter. So I'm very grateful for all of those. The assisted dying, assisted suicide bill is heading for a crucial vote tomorrow, a moment that could mark a major shift in how the UK approaches end-of-life care. Supporters say it is about giving terminally ill people dignity and choice. Opponents warn it could put vulnerable lives at risk and fundamentally change how we value life itself. With tensions rising on both sides of the debate, I spoke to the Archbishop of Southwark to discuss the potential consequences of these proposals. Your Grace, the bill on assisted dying, assisted suicide, to call it by its real name, is now back before the Commons. You have campaigned strongly against it. Why should secular Britain listen to a Catholic view on life?
I think fundamentally because the Catholic view on life is reasonable. It's based in reason. That a society which begins to kill its weakest and its poorest devolves into something that is so unthinkable and so tragic that none of us really want that. No right-thinking person should want that. There is always a time to die. We talk about a holy death, a happy death, a death in communion with God, a death in communion with the people that we love around us. There can never be a time to kill. And this is the distinction that is so important. The compassionate care for the dying is reasonable and sensible and just. The murder of people, which is what this will be, it will be taking their lives, killing them. Murder is never a rational thing. Violence is not rational.
But is it depriving people of their God-given free will, that they decide they want to end their life, the pain is too much, the doctor is there with the phial of morphine? Isn't it their right to decide?
I think a God-given free will requires us to orientate our will towards what God asks of us. Autonomy, unfettered autonomy, the right to choose whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want, is really what's at stake here. And that unfettered autonomy is not something we tolerate in all kinds of ways in our society. You know, we have speed limits. That fetters my autonomy to drive at whatever speed I want to. We do it for good reasons, to protect people. So we have to recognise that none of us has complete and absolute autonomy. We live in the context of a society, and what is necessary for the preservation of the common good, not least for the weakest and those who are most vulnerable, means that sometimes my autonomous right must be curtailed.
And as you rightly say, it protects the vulnerable, the law as it currently is. And the thing that worries me most about this isn't actually greedy relations saying, isn't it time you pushed off? It's people putting pressure on themselves and saying, I'm a burden to the NHS, I'm a burden to my children. If I died now, my grandchild could buy a new car with the inheritance. And there's very little the law can do to protect people from that internalised pressure.
No, I agree completely. I've worked as a hospital chaplain and a hospice chaplain as well in different places. And one of the challenges when people are in the last stages of their life is to remind them that they're loved. They're not a burden, that they're loved. They often rehearse all their needs and the ways in which they're putting people out and the concerns they have about their carers and their family, and they're too much trouble for people. And the important message they need to hear is not, yes, you're right, you are too much trouble, let's end it all. They need to hear, no, you're loved. You're loved. We will accompany you on this journey, and we will love you to the end.
And mistakes get made. With the argument on capital punishment, the biggest argument against it is the risk of 1 in 100 mistakes. With end-of-life care, doctors get it wrong on how long people have to live, I think 1 in 3 times. So the chance of mistakes is enormous.
Yes, even in a perfect system, there are still mistakes to be made. The diagnosis is not a perfect skill, and we all know people who've been given a month to live, 2 months to live, and they're here 2-3 years later. So we have to be very careful that we don't act simply out of emotion or out of power. And that's the real issue here. It's the exercise of power of the strong over the weak. And the pressure that puts on people becomes intolerable, especially if they're in a state of sickness or depression. When life is gloomy, what they need is someone to show them there is hope.
And in terms of that pressure, one of the pressures being that the NHS is short of money. And if you say, well, we won't have to give end-of-life care, that could be a huge saving. So that becomes a sort of state-driven pressure on people to end their lives.
It's a ridiculous economics of death. And we must resist it. It's as simple as that. We must resist it. If someone is in a terrible state of pain and suffering, the answer is to change the doctor, not kill them.
Your Grace, that is the clearest statement I've ever heard on this matter. And thank you for the wonderful campaign that you and your fellow bishops have led. I think I and many Catholics feel that we've seen true leadership from our spiritual leaders in this difficult area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's get a quick word from my panel, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the former government advisor James Price. Nigel, the bill's before the House again tomorrow. There may be the third reading vote tomorrow. How would you vote at this stage? Do you think it's a bill that can be improved in the Lords?
Yes, I think it can be improved. I would vote against it if I was an MP tomorrow. However, I do believe in the principle of it. I think that if you have the right to life, you must also have the right to die. And we have this ridiculous situation in this country where you can go into a hospice and starve yourself to death with staff making you as comfortable as possible. That is still a gruesome and prolonged death, but those staff can't help you to make it a kinder one.
James, what are your thoughts?
I think it's wonderful to see faith being brought into this conversation again after so long. I think it's an area where we can actually draw on expertise of people like His Grace there. I wouldn't want to go into a theological debate against him or with you on this, but I would disagree with something that he said there, this idea that violence is never wrong. We think it's okay for the police occasionally to shoot people if they need to, for soldiers to do it. So I don't think that there's a never, ever this should be allowed. But I do think if we get to a point where you're able to kill Granny, a lot of the British public will say, well, why can't you kill Axel Rudakabana, the Southport murderer? Why can't you kill the most awful people as well? And we're opening up a whole other can of worms there if we do this. And I think just quickly, what you said, I agree with you. Everybody should vote no on this because it's been a complete dog's dinner of a process and there's been no scrutiny at all so far.
But the principle of it you're in favour of.
Yes.
Are you worried about James's point that it does open up the debate on capital punishment?
No, I don't. What I do think it does is that you get mission creep, like they have in Canada, where 1 in 20 people now are dying from assisted deaths. And I think the biggest danger is not having a High Court judge involved and just a panel. Eventually, the panel will become inured to what they're doing, and the danger of that is that it becomes commonplace.
So you would like strict control, strict protections, but believe it is a fundamental right. And James, you're basically with the Archbishop. You think that life must be protected because otherwise, where do you stop?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think the Canada example is a really good one. There was a story where somebody called up a suicide hotline saying, look, I'm having suicidal thoughts, I want to kill myself. And the person on the end of the phone says, have you tried medical-assisted dying and killing yourself? And the person thought this was so evil and ludicrous, it did actually shock them out of their suicidal ideation. And I don't talk about this very much. A long time ago, I was in that sort of situation, feeling very, very depressed and wanting to end my life and all these sorts of things. And thank God these sorts of things weren't around because I wouldn't be here as happy as I am today talking to all of you. So we'll be very, very careful about this mission creep, as you say.
Well, thank you very much for that. Now, just to say, of course, today is the feast of Corpus Christi, so it's a day of holy obligation. So all you Catholics who haven't been to Mass, you've missed out and you'd better go to confession. But now I think it's time to hand over to Patrick Christys. Patrick, are you there? That's me done for this week. I'll be back next Monday.
Absolutely. Fantastic show. Fantastic week, Jacob. So we are going to be going live to Ballymena. Will there be a fourth night of anti-migrant protests? We all saw that disaster in India. But what I want to know is, what will they be able to get from that black box? Will we be able to find out officially what happened? Will we be able to find out tonight? I'm worried that Labour are going to turn Britain into a nation of illegal migrant tent cities. I can't see any other thing happening if they decide to shut all these migrant hotels. Let's be honest, they're not going to deport any of them, are they? And the NHS, we now spend more on our NHS than the entire GDP of Portugal. I'm going to pose a controversial question. Is it actually getting too much money? All of that after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some heavy downpours today. They're easing somewhat overnight, but further thunderstorms are likely, particularly so this time tomorrow. Low pressure is sitting to the west, and that's drawing up warm and humid air. It's going to be quite a sticky night, quite a close night. We've seen some heavy downpours across Northern Ireland. They're starting to ease. Still some lively downpours for parts of North Wales, northwest England at the moment, but they'll track northwards and ease off as they do. Still quite a wet night across parts of western Scotland. Many areas, though, further east, having a dry night, long clear spells, but look at the numbers. Holding up in the mid-teens. That brisk breeze will be easing in most places through the night. So it won't be as windy tomorrow. Much of eastern England having a fine and sunny start, along with much of northern Scotland as well. The overnight rain should be pulling away from the Western Isles. Still maybe 1 or 2 showers in western Scotland, and certainly there will be more showers again in Northern Ireland. They could get pretty lively, especially around the middle part of the day. The odd shower for Wales, but most of England and Wales will have a dry start to the morning and quite a warm start as well, and pretty sticky, steamy day across these eastern parts where temperatures come in the afternoon may get into the high 20s. Not as hot where we've got a bit more cloud elsewhere, but still generally dry and bright. It's quite humid. Some heavy downpours around the middle of the day for Northern Ireland, and look down to the south. Another batch of thunderstorms then starting to arrive late in the day, coming into the southwest. As I said, very warm across these eastern areas. Elsewhere, temperatures in the low 20s generally. But those high temperatures and the humidity likely to spark another round of thunderstorms coming up initially across the south during Friday evening, then spreading to Wales, and by the end of the night and into Saturday across parts of northern England. Met Office warnings are in place for heavy rain and thunderstorms. Do check out the Met Office website for full details of those warnings.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle